For 40 years, I lived with a locked freezer in my house, and when I finally opened it, I discovered I had spent my entire life knitting for my husband's mistress's son. My name is Louise. I'm 76 years old. I was born here in rural Tennessee, in a small town where everybody knows everybody. You know? I spent my whole life here, raised my daughter here, buried my husband here. And it's right here that I'm going to tell you the most painful story of my life. A story I kept locked in my chest for 40 years, just like that freezer stayed locked in the back room of my house. Before I start telling you everything properly, I wanted to ask you folks who are watching me now for a little favor. If you can, please click that like button on this video. Subscribe to the Grandma's Diary channel because I have so much more to tell, so many life stories that might help someone. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It makes me so happy to know there are people from all over America listening to me. That gives me strength to keep telling these stories that hurt so much, but need to be told. Well, let's go. I need to go back in time for you to understand everything properly. I need to go back to 1967. I was 18 years old. I was a skinny girl with long braids who helped my mother take care of my 5 younger siblings. Back then, a poor girl from the countryside didn't have many choices in life, you know? We grew up helping at home, learning to cook, wash, iron, sew. My mother taught me how to knit when I was 10 years old. She said that a woman who knew how to knit would never go hungry because she'd always have a way to earn some money. And she was right, but she never imagined that this gift she gave me would be used in such a cruel way. It was in March 1967 that I met Hamilton. He was a mechanic, worked at a garage in the neighboring town, was 21 years old. He was tall, dark-skinned, a man of few words. My father knew his father from back in the day when they worked together on a farm. One day my father came home and said, "Louise, you're going to marry Gerald's son. He's a hard worker, has a trade. He'll take good care of you." Simple as that. Back then, that's how things worked. Father decided, daughter obeyed. I barely knew Hamilton. We saw each other maybe 3 times before the wedding. He would come to my house, sit in the living room, talk with my father while I served coffee. He barely looked at me. I was afraid of him, to tell the truth. He was very serious, very closed off. But I couldn't say no. An 18-year-old girl didn't say no to her father back then. We got married in July 1967. It was a simple church wedding. I wore a white dress that my mother sewed. Hamilton wore a borrowed suit. There was a small party at my parents' house with cake, soda, some snacks. And in the evening, Hamilton took me to the little house he had rented in the town where he worked. I remember I cried all night. I cried missing my mother, my siblings, my home. I cried scared of what my life would be from then on. Hamilton didn't comfort me. He slept with his back to me, without saying a word. The first years of marriage were difficult. Hamilton worked all day at the garage, came home late, tired, dirty with grease, barely talked to me, had dinner, took a shower, and went to sleep. On weekends he went out with friends to play cards, drink a beer. I stayed home alone. I didn't know anyone in that town. I had no friends, no family nearby. It was just me, the house, and silence. I started knitting to pass the time. I made tablecloths, dish towels, things like that. A neighbor saw and ordered a blanket for her daughter who was getting married. Then another person ordered a baby sweater, and that's how I started getting clients. The money I earned from knitting helped with household expenses. Hamilton never complained about that. Actually, he even liked it, because that way I stayed quiet, busy, and didn't bother him. In 1972, I got pregnant. It was the only time I saw Hamilton show any emotion. He was happy. It wasn't that obvious happiness, but you could tell he wanted that child. Our daughter was born in January 1973. We named her Teresa. She was tiny, red-headed like my mother, with little green eyes that sparkled. When Teresa was born, I thought things would get better between Hamilton and me. I thought we would get closer, that he would be more affectionate, but it wasn't like that. He continued the same way. He worked, came home, had dinner, slept. On weekends he went out. The difference was that now I had Teresa to keep me company, and I clung to that girl like she was my lifeline. I put all the love I had inside me into that child. The years passed. Teresa grew up. I continued knitting. Orders increased. I was already known in town as the knitting lady. People came to my house, ordered pieces, I made them, delivered them, got paid. That's how I spent my days, knitting and taking care of my daughter. Hamilton continued being the same closed-off, distant man of few words. But I got used to it. I learned to live with that silence. I learned not to expect affection from him. I learned not to expect anything. Actually, I had Teresa. I had my knitting. I had my routine. And I thought that's what marriage was. I thought all married women lived like this, in silence, in loneliness, doing what had to be done. It was in 1985 that everything changed. Or rather, it was in 1985 that the part of the story began that only ended now, 40 years later. It was a Saturday morning. I remember it was October because it was starting to get hot. I was in the backyard hanging clothes on the line when I heard a truck noise in front of the house. I went to see what it was. There was an old pickup truck parked on the street, and Hamilton was there talking to a man. The two were unloading something big covered with a tarp. Hamilton saw me at the door and shouted, "Louise, open the gate so I can bring something in." I opened the gate. The two men carried that heavy thing, went through the living room, went to the back room. It was a small room we used to store old junk, tools, things like that. When they removed the tarp, I saw what it was. A freezer. One of those horizontal freezers, big, white, but this one was old, rusted on the sides, with the lid dented in one corner. Hamilton paid the man. He left. I stood there, looking at that freezer. Hamilton plugged it into the outlet. The motor started humming, that loud, continuous noise. Then he looked at me with a face I had never seen. It was a mixture of anger and fear, and he said, very slowly, very seriously, "Louise, pay attention to what I'm going to say. This freezer here is mine. I'm going to store some of my things in here. Tools, garage parts, things like that. You will never, under any circumstances, open this freezer. Understand? Never." I didn't understand. I said, "But Hamilton, why a freezer just to store tools? We don't even have a freezer to store food, and you bring one to store tools." He took a step towards me. His look was different, dangerous. "Did you understand what I said, Louise? You will never open this freezer. This is none of your business. These are my things, man things. You never put your hands on this." I felt scared. I stayed quiet. I nodded, yes. He left the room, came back with a big padlock, one of those for gates, and locked the freezer lid. He put the key in his pants pocket. From that day on, he walked around with that key hanging around his neck on a little chain. He showered with the key, slept with the key, never took it off. Teresa, who was 12 at the time, asked, "Dad, what's in that freezer?" Hamilton looked at her with that closed face and said, "My things are none of your business, and I don't want you or your mother near that room. Did you hear?" And that was it. The freezer stayed there locked, humming day and night. I heard that constant noise, especially at dawn, when everything was quiet, that hum, hum, hum. I heard that noise for 40 years. I looked at that room and wondered what the hell was inside that freezer that was so important. But I never asked again, never tried to open it. Back then, a wife didn't question her husband. If he said not to open it, it wasn't to be opened. Simple as that. Even if it ate at me inside, even if I lost sleep thinking about what could be in there, I obeyed. As always, I obeyed. And life went on. The freezer there locked, humming, and me here knitting, taking care of the house, raising Teresa, not knowing that inside that freezer was stored the most painful secret of my life. The years passed, and that freezer continued there locked, making that noise that never stopped. I tried not to think about it, tried to focus on my life, my work, Teresa, but it was hard. Every time I passed near that room, my heart tightened. There was something wrong there. I felt it. But what could I do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Teresa grew up. She was a studious, intelligent girl. She finished elementary school, middle school. In 1989, she started working at a fabric store in town. She earned little, but helped at home. Hamilton continued working at the garage. I continued with my knitting. It was around this time, between 1977 and 78, that a different client appeared. I remember her well because she was very elegant. In a small country town, where women wore simple cotton dresses, flip-flops, she always appeared well-dressed. She wore knee-length skirts, good fabric blouses, low-heeled shoes. Her hair was always styled, pulled back in a bun. She wore red lipstick, something almost nobody used around here back then. Her name was Josephine. She knocked on my door on a Tuesday afternoon. I was knitting a blanket ordered by Mrs. Gerald, my neighbor. I answered the door and came face to face with that beautiful, perfumed woman smiling at me. "Are you Mrs. Louise who knits?" she asked with a soft, educated voice. "That's me," I replied. "Oh, good. People spoke very highly of your work. I wanted to order some pieces. Do you have time for us to talk?" I told her to come in. I offered coffee. She accepted. We sat at the kitchen table. She took out a little notebook from her purse and started writing. She said she wanted a large light blue wool blanket. She also wanted some baby sweaters, newborn size, one blue and one yellow. She wanted tablecloths, you know? Those well-worked crochet ones with flower designs. I wrote everything down. I asked when she needed them. She said she wasn't in a hurry. It could be in 2 months. I asked if it was for some party, some birthday. She smiled and said, "It's for someone very special to me." She didn't give more details and I didn't insist. A client is a client. It wasn't my business to know what she wanted it for. We agreed on the price. She thought it was fair. Didn't haggle. She paid half in advance right there in cash. She said she would come back to pick it up when it was ready. I wrote down her name, Josephine. I didn't write her last name because she didn't give it. She said goodbye, polite, and left. I started making her orders. I bought the light blue wool, the yellow wool, the thread for crochet. I spent days working on that. The blanket turned out beautiful. The sweaters turned out cute, tiny, delicate. The tablecloths turned out perfect. Josephine came back exactly 2 months later. She loved everything, took the pieces, examined them one by one, praised my work, paid the rest, and before leaving she said, "Mrs. Louise, I'm going to need to order more things. Do you mind if I come back?" "Of course not. Come back whenever you need," I replied. And she came back. She came back many times. For years, Josephine was my most constant client. She ordered all kinds of things: blankets, sweaters, baby booties, caps, mittens, everything always in baby colors: blue, yellow, pink, light green. I thought it was strange that she ordered so many baby things, but I thought maybe she resold them or had many godchildren or whatever. It wasn't my business. What caught my attention most was that she always asked me to embroider initials on the pieces, specific letters. I remember once she ordered a navy blue sweater and asked me to embroider J on the pocket. Another time she ordered a white blanket and asked for J+H embroidered in the corner inside a heart. I embroidered without asking anything, did my work properly. She paid well, always advanced part of the money, never was late to pick up. She was the dream client of any seamstress, but there was something strange. Every time she came to my house, she seemed hurried, didn't stay long, didn't accept coffee, didn't talk about her life. Everything was very quick. She arrived, picked up the order or placed a new order, paid, and left. And she always looked around before entering, as if she was afraid of someone seeing her here. Once I offered, "If you prefer, I can deliver the orders to your house. It's no trouble at all." She got a bit embarrassed and said, "No need, Mrs. Louise. I prefer to come pick them up here. It's easier for me." I thought that was strange, but I didn't insist. Everyone has their quirks, their ways. Josephine was my client for years, from 1977 to about 1984, 7 years of constant orders. I made so many things for her I lost count. I must have made 50, 60 pieces over those years, maybe more. The money she paid me helped a lot at home. I could buy better clothes for Teresa, could do better grocery shopping, could save a little money for emergencies. Hamilton never asked where that extra money came from. He knew I knitted, knew I had clients. It was all the same to him. There was one order I'll never forget. It was in 1983. Josephine arrived here on a winter afternoon. It was cold, I remember well. She came in all bundled up with a gray wool coat. She sat in my living room and said she wanted a special piece. Mrs. Louise, I need a baby sweater, but it has to be perfect. The best you've ever made. It can be baby blue with white buttons, and I want you to embroider a name on the chest, very carefully done. What name, Mrs. Josephine? I asked. She looked me in the eyes and said, Hamilton Jr. I froze. Hamilton, my husband's name. I thought that was the biggest coincidence in the world. I said, How curious. My husband's name is Hamilton. She gave a small smile, somewhat embarrassed, and said, It's a nice name, isn't it? It's not very common. Not really, I agreed. She paid in advance, as always, said it was urgent, that she needed it in 3 weeks. I promised I would do it. I spent days making that sweater. I bought the softest blue wool in the store. I chose little white pearl buttons. I made it stitch by stitch, with all the care in the world. I embroidered the name Hamilton Jr. with white thread in cursive letters, very delicate. It turned out beautiful. It was one of the most beautiful pieces I ever made in my life. When Josephine came to pick it up, she held that sweater with so much care it seemed like she was holding something sacred. Her eyes were shining. She ran her hand over the embroidery slowly, as if she was caressing it. It's perfect, Mrs. Louise. Perfect. Thank you so much, she said with an emotional voice. I smiled. I liked when clients were happy with my work. She paid the rest, carefully put the sweater in a bag, and left. I stood there thinking it must be for a grandson, a nephew, some child very special to her. It never crossed my mind what the truth was. After that order, Josephine came back 2 or 3 more times, always ordering baby pieces, always asking to embroider initials, always hurried, always somewhat suspicious, and I always doing the work properly, without asking anything. Until in 1984, she stopped coming, simply stopped. I waited. I thought she was traveling, that she was busy, but a month passed, 2 months, 6 months, a year. She never appeared again. I was even worried. I thought maybe she had moved from town or something had happened to her. But I didn't know where she lived, had no way to look for her, and honestly, I had other clients, other orders. Life went on, but I confess I missed her orders, not just for the money, but because I liked making those delicate baby pieces. I liked embroidering those names, those initials. There was something special about it. I put care into those works, more care than I put into other orders. I can't explain why. Maybe because I knew those pieces were for someone very loved. I felt that, and now, looking back, I understand why. During all those years, from 1977 to 84, I was knitting for my husband's other family. I was making blankets, sweaters, tablecloths, booties for the son he had with his mistress. I was embroidering his name, embroidering initials that represented his love for another woman. My hands worked, my fingers wove, my needle went in and out of the wool, creating perfect stitches. And I didn't even suspect that each of those stitches was a lie. Each piece I made was a betrayal. Hamilton knew. Of course he knew. He must have been orchestrating all of that. He must have asked Josephine to come here, pretend she was just any client, order things. He used my work, my gift, my skill to support his lie, to dress his son, the son he had with another woman. And the worst of all is that he made me charge for it. I charged her. I received the money that probably came from his own pocket. He was paying me to knit for his betrayal's son. What kind of man does something like that? What kind of heart can be so cruel? But at the time, I didn't know anything. I was just an innocent, hard-working woman who did her knitting every day trying to help with household expenses. A woman who woke up early, made coffee, took care of her daughter, washed clothes, ironed, cooked, and in her spare time picked up the needle and wool and knitted. I knitted for clients I barely knew. I knitted because that's what I knew how to do. I remember one night, it must have been in 1982, I was knitting a blue blanket for Josephine. It was late. Everyone was already asleep. Hamilton, Teresa, only me awake in the living room with the dim light of the lamp doing my work. And from the back room came that constant noise of the freezer. Hum hum, that motor that never stopped. I looked toward the hallway, toward that room, and thought, what could be in there? Why won't he let me open it? And 1,000 possibilities went through my head. I thought it could be hidden money. I thought it could be something stolen. I thought it could be weapons, drugs, who knows? But never, never did it cross my mind that inside that freezer were stored the proofs of his betrayal, the proofs of a double life he had been living for years. I went back to knitting. My fingers moved automatically, knit stitch, purl stitch, knit stitch, purl stitch, and that blanket grew in my hands, light blue, soft, warm, made with all the care in the world, made for the son I didn't know existed. Life went by slowly, the way life goes by in the countryside. The days were all the same. I woke up early, made coffee, took care of the house, did my knitting. Hamilton continued working at the garage. Teresa grew up, got a boyfriend, a good boy named Vincent. They dated for 3 years and got married in 1992. It was a beautiful wedding, simple, but beautiful. She went to live with him in a little house on the other side of town. I was left alone with Hamilton. Just the two of us in that house that suddenly seemed huge and empty. Teresa always managed to visit me 2-3 times a week. She knew I was alone all day, but still the loneliness weighed on me. I spent hours and hours without exchanging a word with anyone. Hamilton came home from work later and later, sometimes only around 8-9 o'clock at night. He had dinner and went to sleep. He didn't even ask how my day had been. I continued with my knitting. Orders decreased over time. Younger people didn't want these knitting, crochet things anymore. They wanted clothes bought in stores. But I still had my faithful clients, older ladies, like me, who still valued handmade work. Josephine never appeared again. I thought about her from time to time. Had she moved? Had she died? There was no way to know. She had been just another client who passed through my life. The 2000s arrived. We entered the new millennium. I was already 51 years old. Hamilton was 54. He started having health problems, high blood pressure, cholesterol. The doctor told him to diet, stop eating fatty meat, stop drinking. He didn't obey much. He continued eating bacon, ribs, drinking his little beer on weekends. In 2005, he had his first stroke. It was mild, thank God. His mouth was a bit crooked for a few days, but he recovered well. He had to take medicine every day. I was the one who controlled his medicines, separated them properly, gave them at the right times. He complained, said I was annoying, but he took them. Even sick, he didn't stop working. He continued going to the garage every day and continued going out on weekends. I asked where he was going. He said he was going to a friend's house, or that he was going to solve something, or that he was going to see about a job. He never gave details, and I didn't insist anymore. I had given up trying to understand that man. I had given up expecting affection, attention, conversation. We lived together, but separate. Two strangers under the same roof. The freezer continued there in the back room, always on, always humming. 40 years already. I had gotten used to that noise. It became part of the house. When there was some power problem and the freezer stopped, I even found the silence strange. Teresa had 2 children. My grandchildren, Julio and Marcela. I helped take care of them when they were little. I knitted for them, sweaters, blankets, caps. It was a joy to have those children at home. They filled the house with life, noise, laughter. When they left, the silence returned and weighed even more. Hamilton was getting old. His hair turned all white, his back began to curve. He limped on one leg because of a knee problem. He had 2 more small strokes in 2011 and 2015. Each stroke left him a little worse. His speech became more slurred. His memory started failing. There were times he called me by another name. He called me Josephine. The first time that happened, I froze. It was on a Sunday morning in 2016. I was making coffee and he came into the kitchen, still groggy from sleep, and said, "Josephine, give me a glass of water." I turned to him and said, "Hamilton, I'm Louise, your wife. Josephine, who's that?" He blinked confused and said, "Oh, excuse me, I was dreaming. I don't know why I said that name." But I knew it hadn't been a dream. That name had come too naturally from his mouth, as if he was used to calling someone by that name. Josephine, the knitting client who disappeared. Could it be the same person? It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? It could. But what would my husband have to do with a client of mine from 20, 30 years ago? I kept that in my head for days, but didn't ask him anything. There was no point in asking. He would deny it, say I was going crazy, that I was making things up. Hamilton got worse. In 2023, he had to stop working. He couldn't anymore. He got too tired. He started staying home all day. He sat on the porch chair, looked at the street. Sometimes he slept right there. I took care of him, gave him medicine, made food, helped him shower when he couldn't do it alone. I didn't feel love for him. I won't lie. That feeling had died a long time ago, but I took care of him because it was my duty, because we had married, because it was the right thing to do. It was on October 23rd, 2025 that everything changed, less than a month ago. It seems like a lifetime ago. It was a Monday. I had just finished washing the lunch dishes. Hamilton was sitting in the living room chair, watching television. Suddenly, I heard a strange noise, a moan. I went to see what it was. Hamilton was on the floor, eyes rolled back, mouth drooling. Another stroke. I screamed for help. Jeremiah, my neighbor, heard and came running. He called the ambulance. They took Hamilton to the hospital. I went along. Teresa arrived soon after, desperate. The doctors did everything, but the stroke had been very strong, very serious. It affected his whole brain. Hamilton went into a coma. He was connected to machines with all those tubes. Teresa cried nonstop. I stayed there holding his hand, looking at that man who had spent his whole life by my side, but whom I had never really known. He died 3 days later, on October 26th, at 6 in the morning. I was there. I saw when the doctor turned off the machines. I saw when his chest stopped going up and down. I saw when he left. I didn't cry. I know it seems strange, but I didn't cry. I think I had already cried everything I had to cry over those 58 years of marriage. I had no more tears. The funeral was the next day. A lot of people came, colleagues from the garage, neighbors, distant relatives, everyone saying he was a hard-working, honest, good man. I listened to that and thought, you didn't know the Hamilton I knew. You didn't live with his silence, his coldness, his secrets. After the funeral came the wake at my house, as is customary here. People brought food, coffee, cake. They stayed late talking, remembering stories. I just wanted everyone to leave. I wanted to be alone. I wanted silence. When finally everyone left, it was almost midnight. Teresa wanted to stay with me, but I said I didn't need it, that I was fine. She went to her house. I was left alone. I walked through the empty house. I looked at the chair where Hamilton sat, at the bed where he slept, at his clothes hanging in the closet, and I felt something strange. It wasn't sadness, it was relief, an enormous relief to finally be free of that man. And then my eyes went to the hallway, to the back room, to that place forbidden for 40 years. 40 years. I walked there slowly, my heart beating hard. I opened the room door. The light bulb had burned out. I turned on my phone flashlight, and there it was, The freezer, still on, still humming. The padlock key had been buried with Hamilton, hanging around his neck inside the coffin. I looked at that freezer and thought, what are you hiding? What did this man keep here all these years? I went back to the living room, picked up the phone, called Teresa. It was almost 1 a.m, but I didn't care. Daughter, can you come here now? I asked. Mom, did something happen? Are you okay? She asked, worried. I am, but I need you here. I need you to come and bring Vincent and a tool to cut the padlock. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then she said, Are you going to open the freezer? Yes. After 40 years, I'm going to find out what your father was hiding from me. Half an hour later, Teresa and Vincent arrived. She hugged me, asked if I was sure. I said yes, that I needed to know, that I deserved to know. We went, the three of us, to the back room. Vincent had brought a big tool, proper for cutting metal. He positioned it on the padlock ring, looked at me. Mrs. Louise, are you sure? I took a deep breath. 40 years. 40 years I waited for this moment without knowing I was waiting. Cut it, I said. He applied force. The metal creaked once, twice. On the third time, the padlock broke in half and fell to the floor with a dry noise. Teresa held my hand. She was trembling. Or was I trembling? I don't know. I approached the freezer, put my hands on the lid. That lid that had been closed for 40 years. That lid that kept the secrets of a man who never truly loved me. I lifted it, and what I saw inside changed everything, destroyed everything, explained everything. The first thing I saw were plastic bags, those thick, transparent bags that we used to store things in the freezer back then. There were many stacked on top of each other, organized carefully. The cold that came from inside the freezer hit my face. 40 years on, 40 years freezing whatever was in there. I reached out, trembling. I took the first plastic bag. It was light. There was something soft inside. I opened it slowly, and when I saw what it was, my legs almost failed. It was knitting. It was a light blue baby blanket, one of those I used to make. The stitch was perfect. I recognized it immediately. It was my work, my hand, my knitting. Mom, what is this? Teresa asked, approaching. I couldn't answer. I took another plastic bag, opened it. It was a yellow baby sweater, also made by me, also perfect. The little buttons were still shining as if they were new. I took another and another and another. Each bag I opened had a knitted piece. Blankets, sweaters, booties, tablecloths, caps, mittens, everything handmade, everything made by me. I recognized every stitch, every detail. They were my works that I had made decades ago. Mom, I don't understand why Dad kept your knitting in the freezer, Teresa asked, confused. I took a navy blue sweater, turned it to see better, and then I saw. Embroidered on the pocket with white thread in cursive letters, it said, J. My heart stopped. I took a white blanket that was underneath. In the corner, embroidered inside a heart, was J+H. My hands started trembling uncontrollably. I knew those embroideries. I had made them myself. I had embroidered those initials. I had embroidered those names. They were Josephine's orders, the client who disappeared. Mom, what do these letters mean? Vincent asked. I didn't answer. I continued taking plastic bags out of the freezer. There were so many, so many. There must have been 50, 60 pieces in there, maybe more. All the orders I had made for Josephine over those 7 years were there. All of them. She had never taken anything away. Or she had taken them and returned them, or they had never been for her from the beginning. At the bottom of the freezer, under all the knitting bags, there was a shoebox, old, faded. I took it with both hands. It was heavy. I removed the lid. Inside were photographs, many photographs, all old, those developed on photographic paper, with white borders. I took the first photo. It was Hamilton, younger. He must have been in his early 30s. He was smiling, smiling. I almost didn't recognize him smiling like that. I never saw Hamilton smile like that at me. Next to him was a woman, beautiful, elegant, hair pulled back in a bun, red lipstick. It was Josephine. They were embracing. His hand was on her waist. She was leaning against him, happy. I turned the photo over. On the back, written in blue pen, it said, "Me and my love, 1970." 1970. 3 years after I married Hamilton, I took another photo. Hamilton and Josephine again, this time at a barbecue. There were other people in the photo, but the two of them were together, side by side. She was pregnant. Her belly was already big. On the back of the photo it said, "Barbecue at Joe's house, 1973." 1973. The same year my daughter was born, I took another photo. Hamilton holding a baby, a tiny boy wrapped in a blue blanket. Hamilton looked at that baby with a love I never ever saw him show for anyone. Not for Teresa, not for me. On the back of the photo, "My son, my pride." 1973. I started trembling so much that Teresa had to hold my arm. "Mom, sit down. You need to sit down." But I couldn't sit. I couldn't stop. I continued looking at the photos, one after another. Hamilton with Josephine at parties. Hamilton with the boy in his lap. Hamilton teaching the boy to walk. Hamilton at the boy's birthday. Hamilton, Josephine, and the boy at a park. Hamilton giving the boy a bath. Hamilton hugging Josephine and the boy sleeping between them. A family. They were a family. And in all the photos, in all of them, without exception, Hamilton was smiling, happy, in love, present. It was a Hamilton I didn't know, a Hamilton who never existed for me. I continued searching in the box. Under the photos, there were documents. I took the first one. It was a birth certificate. I read the name, Hamilton Fernandez Jr., born April 15, 1973. Father, Hamilton Fernandez. Mother, Josephine Aparecida Santos. My husband had another son, a son 2 months younger than my Teresa, a son he had with another woman, a son he registered, a son he claimed. I took another document. It was a rent receipt in the name of Hamilton Fernandez. The address was of a house in the neighboring town. Date, January 1974. He paid rent for a house for them, for his other family. There were more receipts, dozens of rent, electricity bills, water bills, all in his name, all from the same address, for years, for decades. There were little letters written in a child's handwriting. "Dear Dad, thank you for the present. I love you very much, Hamilton Jr." There were drawings, there were report cards, there was a graduation invitation. Josephine Aparecida Santos and Hamilton Fernandez have the honor of inviting you to the graduation of their son, Hamilton Fernandez Jr., Civil Engineering, class of 1996. His son graduated as an engineer, and Hamilton went to the graduation. While I was here alone at home knitting, he was there watching his son graduate. There were letters, love letters between Hamilton and Josephine. I read one. It was written in his handwriting, all crooked, full of grammar mistakes. "My love, Josephine, I know it's hard for us to live like this, hidden, but I love you. I love you, and I love our son more than anything in this life. You are the reason I wake up every day. When I'm with you, I'm happy. When I have to come back to that house, I die inside. But I promise that someday we'll be together for real. I'll figure it out. Wait for me, your Hamilton." The letter was from 1976. I read another and another. Dozens of letters, all declaring eternal love for her, all talking about their son with pride, all saying that one day he would leave everything to be with her. But he never left. He stayed with me not because he loved me, but because it was convenient, because I took care of the house, because I didn't cause trouble, because I was invisible. I took one more photo. It was deeper in the box. It was recent. It must have been from 10-15 years ago. Hamilton was already old, white hair curved back. He was sitting in a chair, and next to him was Josephine, also old, with all gray hair. And on the other side was a man about 40 years old, tall, who looked like Hamilton. It was the son. The three of them were together smiling. On the back of the photo it said, "Last photo with my love before she departed. Rest in peace, Josephine. I will love you forever. 2014. She had died in 2014. And Hamilton had kept that photo, the last photo, with her. I dropped the box on the floor, the photos scattered. I looked at all that, at the knitting bags, at the photos, at the documents, at the letters. 40 years. 40 years of lies, 40 years of betrayal, 40 years of double life. And then I understood. I understood everything. Josephine was never my client. She was the woman Hamilton loved, and he figured out a way to make me knit for his son. He must have asked her to come here, pretend she was ordering pieces, pay me with money he himself gave her. And I, innocent, did everything. I embroidered his son's name, I embroidered his initials with her. I made sweaters, blankets, tablecloths. I put love into those works and delivered everything to my husband's mistress. I worked to support his betrayal. My hands made little clothes to dress the son he had with another woman, the son he loved, the son he watched grow up, the son he saw graduate as an engineer. Meanwhile, my daughter, Teresa, barely received a look from him. He never went to a school meeting for her, never helped her with homework, never played with her, never gave affection, because all his love was saved for the other son, for the son he had with the woman he really loved. And the worst of all, the cruelest of all, he kept everything in the freezer, kept the little clothes I made, the photos of him happy, the love letters, the documents, kept everything frozen for 40 years. He couldn't throw it away because it was too important to him. They were the proofs of the love of his life, of his son, of his real family, but he also couldn't leave them anywhere else because I might find them. So he locked everything there in the freezer, frozen, preserved forever, and forbade me to open it, threatened me, controlled me. For 40 years. 40 years I heard that freezer hum. 40 years I wondered what was inside there. 40 years I lived with his secret locked a few meters from me. "Mom!" Teresa's voice brought me back. She was crying, holding one of the photos, the photo of Hamilton with the boy in his lap. "Mom, he had another son. Dad had another son." I looked at my daughter, at my Teresa, who spent her whole life trying to win the love of a father who never really looked at her, because his love was all invested elsewhere. And then, finally, after not crying at the wake, after not crying at the funeral, after spending 3 days holding everything in, I broke down. I fell to my knees on the floor of that back room and cried. I cried like I had never cried in my life. I cried for me, for the deceived woman, for the used woman, for the invisible woman I was for 58 years. I cried for Teresa, for the rejected daughter, for the daughter who never understood why her father was so cold. I cried for the lost years, for the love I never received, for the life I never had. I cried until I had no more tears, until I had no more voice, until I had no more strength. And when I finally stopped, when I finally could breathe again, I looked at that empty freezer and thought, now I know. Now I know everything. But did I want to know? I spent 3 days without leaving that back room. Teresa tried to convince me to go to the bedroom, to rest, to eat something, but I couldn't move from there. I stayed sitting on the floor, surrounded by those plastic bags full of knitting, surrounded by those photos, those letters, those documents, surrounded by the truth I had spent my whole life without knowing. I took each knitted piece, one by one, examined every stitch, every embroidery. I remembered when I had made that. I remembered Josephine arriving at my house, smiling, polite, ordering. I remembered her paying. I remembered her leaving, hurried, looking around. Now everything made sense. She was afraid of being seen. She was afraid someone would suspect. It must have hurt her too. It must have hurt having to go to the house of the wife of the man she loved, pretend to be just any client, take the little clothes that were for her son. Or maybe it didn't hurt. Maybe she thought it was funny. Maybe she and Hamilton laughed about it afterward. Imagine, I made Louise knit for our son without her knowing. Maybe it was a joke between them, a fun secret, a cruelty disguised as cleverness. I'll never know. Josephine died in 2014. Hamilton died now. They took their secrets to the grave. They only left the evidence behind. The evidence that was here frozen waiting for me. On the third day, I finally got up. I gathered all the photos, all the documents, all the letters, put everything back in the shoebox. I took that box, left the room, crossed the house, went to the backyard. Teresa came after me. "Mom, what are you going to do?" I didn't answer. I took an old can we used to burn trash. I put it on the ground. I opened the box. I took the first photo. Hamilton smiling with Josephine. I looked at that image, at that happy man I never knew. I lit a match. I touched it to the photo. It caught fire quickly. I saw his face melt, turn black, turn to ash. I threw it in the can, took another photo, burned another. I burned them one by one, all the photos of him happy, him with her, him with his son. They all turned to smoke, turned to ash, turned to nothing. I burned the letters, all of them. I saw his words of love for her turn to dust. I saw his promises to be together turn to smoke. I burned the documents, the receipts, the bills, the proof that he supported another house, another family, another life. I burned everything except one thing, one photo. The photo of the baby, that little boy wrapped in the blue blanket, Hamilton Jr., with the navy blue sweater I had made with the HJ embroidered on the pocket. This photo I kept, I don't know why. Maybe because that baby wasn't guilty of anything. Maybe because, despite everything, he was an innocent child. Maybe because that sweater had been made by my hands, with my care, even without me knowing who it was really for. When I finished burning everything, Teresa approached me. She had cried so much in those 3 days that her eyes were swollen, red. "Mom, what do we do now? Do we look for this man, this Hamilton Jr.?" I looked at my daughter, my Teresa, who spent her whole childhood trying to get the attention of a father who never really looked at her. A father who kept all his love locked in a freezer. All his love reserved for another son. "Yes," I said, "we look for him. He deserves to know the truth, just like we deserve to." It took 2 weeks for us to find him. Teresa asked for help from a cousin of hers who works with computers, internet things. He managed to find the full name, the address. Hamilton Fernandez Jr. lived in the state capital. He was a civil engineer, as it said on the diploma, married, had 2 children. I wrote a letter, told who I was, told what I had discovered, sent the photo of him as a baby and the sweater, that navy blue sweater with the HJ embroidered that had been kept in the freezer all those years. 3 days later he called me. His voice was deep, trembling. He said he didn't know that his father was married. His mother, Josephine, always said they were separated, that his father had another family, yes, but it was a family from before, from a marriage that didn't work out. She never said that Hamilton was married at the same time, never said that he had another daughter the same age. He cried on the phone, said he felt deceived, betrayed, that the image he had of his father had crumbled. He asked if he could come see me. I said yes. He came the following Saturday, arrived by car early in the morning. He was a tall, strong man, with glasses, looked like Hamilton, but had his mother's smile. That smile I remembered from Josephine when she came to order knitting. We sat in the living room, me, him, Teresa. It was strange, very strange. We were half-siblings, but had never seen each other before, had never known about each other. He held the navy blue sweater in his hands, ran his fingers over the embroidery. "Did you make this?" he asked. "I did, in 1983. Your mother ordered it, but I didn't know she was really your mother. I thought she was just another client." He looked at me with his eyes full of tears. "You embroidered my name without knowing it was for me." I did. I embroidered it with all the care in the world, because that's how I did my work, with love, even without knowing who it was for. He started crying. And so did I. And Teresa, too. The 3 of us there crying together, crying for the lies, for the separated lives, for the father who was never honest with anyone. We talked for hours. He told me about his life. He said his father visited every week, that he spent weekends with him and his mother, that he went to all his soccer games when he was a child, to all the parties, to all the school meetings, that he taught him to ride a bicycle, that he helped him study for college entrance exams, that he cried with pride when he graduated as an engineer. And while he talked, I saw Teresa next to him listening to all that, listening about a present, caring, loving father, a father she never had. The same man. Two completely different lives. When Hamilton Jr. left, it was already getting dark. He hugged me before leaving. He said he was very, very sorry, that he would have liked to have known us before, that he would have liked things to have been different. I said it wasn't his fault, that he had nothing to do with his father's choices. After he left, Teresa and I sat on the porch in silence, looking at the empty street, until she spoke very quietly. "Mom, why did Dad love him and not love us?" I held her hand, that hand I had held so many times when she was little. "I don't know, my daughter. I think we'll never know what went through his head. But I know one thing. The love he didn't give you, I gave double. And you grew up strong, hardworking, honest. You're a wonderful woman. And that wasn't because of him. It was despite him." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we stayed like that, embracing until night fell completely. In the following days, I made a decision. I donated all the knitting that was in the freezer, all those pieces I had made so many years ago. I donated them to a daycare here in town for poor children who needed them. Those blankets, those sweaters, those tablecloths would finally serve for something good. They would warm real children. They would be useful. And the freezer, that cursed freezer that stayed locked for 40 years keeping secrets, 40 years humming in my house, I had Vincent take it away, donate it, throw it away. It didn't matter. I didn't want to see that anymore. Didn't want to hear that noise anymore. I didn't want anything that reminded me of Hamilton and his lies. When the freezer left the house, when the back room was empty, I felt something I had never felt before. Lightness, as if an enormous weight had been lifted from my back, as if I could finally breathe properly after 58 years holding my breath. Today, 1 month after all this, I'm here sitting in my usual chair with my knitting needles in my hand, making a blanket. But this time it's different. This time I'm making it for me, to keep me warm on cold nights, to keep me company, to occupy my hands with something that's only mine. I forgave. I didn't forgive Hamilton. I think I'll never forgive what he did to me, what he did to Teresa, the lies, the coldness, the stolen years. But I forgave myself for being naive, for not suspecting, for accepting that cold marriage for so long. I forgave myself for all that. And you know what I learned from this whole story? I learned that we can spend our whole life next to someone and not really know them. I learned that keeping a secret is like poison. It corrodes from the inside until it destroys everything. I learned that a locked freezer will always have something that shouldn't be there, but I also learned that we're stronger than we imagine, that we can survive terrible discoveries, that we can get up even when everything collapses, that forgiveness isn't about the other person, it's about ourselves, about releasing the weight, about moving forward. Today, I'm 76 years old. I've been a widow for a month. I discovered a month ago that my marriage was a complete lie, but you know what? I'm free. Free from the man who never loved me. Free from the secrets. Free from the freezer that hummed every night. Free to live what's left of my life the way I want. I don't know how much time I still have. Nobody knows. But the time I have, I'm going to live being true, being whole, without keeping anything locked away, without hiding anything, without accepting crumbs from anyone. Because I'm tired. Tired of living halfway. Tired of being invisible. Tired of knitting for others while I myself was unraveling inside. So, if you who are listening to me now are living a life that doesn't make you happy, if you're accepting less than you deserve, if you're keeping grudges, keeping pain, keeping secrets that hurt you, I tell you one thing. open the freezer. Whatever is locked in your life, open it, face it, cry if you need to, scream if you need to, break if you need to, but then get up and free yourself. Because keeping things frozen inside us doesn't solve anything, it just freezes the pain. But it's still there intact, preserved, waiting for the day you'll have the courage to open it and look it in the face. I took 40 years. Don't take as long as I did. Life is too short for us to live imprisoned by other people's secrets. Open your freezer, thaw your pain, and free yourself, because I finally freed myself. And I can tell you one thing, with all the certainty in the world, after 76 years living locked up, I'm finally free. Finally, I own my own life. Finally, the noise I hear inside the house is just silence. And this silence, for the first time in my life, is beautiful. It's mine. It's peace. And I'm going to enjoy every second of this freedom I've conquered, because I deserved it. I always deserved it. I just took a lifetime to understand that. Before I say goodbye to you, I wanted to ask you for one little thing. If this story touched your heart in some way, if you were moved, if this helped you somehow, please click the like button down there. Subscribe to the Grandma's Diary channel to hear more of my stories, because I still have so much to tell. And tell me in the comments, do you also have some locked freezer in your life? Some kept secret that needs to be opened? I'll read all the comments. You're not alone. A kiss to each of your hearts, and remember, freedom is worth it. It's always worth it.